You ever notice how some comedians don't need to yell, argue, or even curse you out? They just drop one line, and you never forget it. That's Eddie Murphy. He doesn't fake laugh, doesn't pretend, and if he doesn't respect you, you feel it. No punchlines, no backpedaling, just a look, maybe a sentence, and suddenly, your whole career feels different. Because when Eddie calls you corny, that word doesn't go away, it sticks. Now, Eddie Murphy changed comedy forever. Delirious, Raw, Saturday Night Live, blockbuster movies. He wasn't just funny, he was untouchable. But Eddie also kept receipts. If you crossed him, disrespected him, or tried to ride his wave, he didn't scream, he didn't rant, he simply cut you off. Forever. So tonight, let's break down 6 comedians Eddie Murphy wanted nothing to do with. No collaborations, no second chances, no laughs shared, and trust me, each story shows exactly why you don't mess with Eddie. David Spade. It only took one line, one joke that landed in the wrong place at the wrong time. In the mid-90 seconds, Saturday Night Live had a segment called Hollywood Minute. David Spade held up a picture of Eddie Murphy and smirked, "Look, kids, a falling star. Make a wish." The audience laughed. Eddie didn't. See, this wasn't just some random comic taking a jab. This was SNL Eddie's old home, the place he built into a powerhouse. And here was a younger comedian mocking his legacy on the very stage Eddie made famous. Eddie later said it felt mean-spirited, that it stung more because it came from inside the house. He never forgave it. Eddie reportedly told producers he wouldn't step back on that stage as long as Spade was around, and for decades, he didn't. Eddie didn't drag Spade in interviews, didn't humiliate him, he just erased him. No sketches, no movies, no shout-outs. Just silence. In Eddie's world, silence is the ultimate burn. Bill Cosby. This beef didn't start with a joke, it started with judgment. Back in the 1,980 seconds, Eddie was unstoppable. Sold out arenas, comedy albums, going platinum, hit films. But instead of congratulations, Bill Cosby gave him a lecture. Cosby called Eddie personally to scold him about using foul language, saying he was setting a bad example. Eddie never forgot it. Later, he even mocked Cosby on stage in Raw, copying his slow, outraged delivery while the crowd roared. And then came the legendary moment when Eddie told Richard Pryor about the call. Pryor, never one to mince words, simply said, "Tell Bill to have a Coke and shut up." That line drew the battle lines. Pryor stood with Eddie. Cosby kept throwing shade. Eddie didn't clap back for years. But in 2015, after Cosby's scandals became public, Eddie finally dropped one of the coldest jokes ever. "I'd love to talk about Bill, but I'd probably get sued or drugged." No smile, no follow-up. Just one surgical strike after decades of silence, and that was all it took. Howard Stern. If there's one guy known for running his mouth, it's Howard Stern. For years, Stern mocked Eddie on air. His career, his movies, even his family. Eddie said nothing. No retaliation, no drama, just silence. Then, in 2019, Stern put out a book where he apologized to tons of people he'd trashed over the years. Dozens of names made the list. Eddie Murphy's wasn't one of them. So when Eddie was finally asked about Stern in an interview, he stayed calm but sharp. "He used to go after me hard, real personal. I never said anything, but I saw it. You don't have to say sorry if you were never sorry." That's Eddie's style. He doesn't yell, he doesn't clap back, he just keeps the door closed. And for Stern, that silence was permanent. Richard Pryor. This one hurts. Eddie didn't just look up to Richard Pryor, he studied him. Pryor wasn't just funny, he was raw truth on stage. Eddie once said he listened to Pryor's albums over and over like a student learning from a master. But admiration can turn sour. As Eddie rose to fame, people started comparing him to Pryor, calling him the next Richard. Pryor didn't like that. According to Paul Mooney, Pryor felt Eddie was too polished, too Hollywood, not real enough. The respect Eddie wanted never came. And when Pryor received the very first Mark Twain Prize for Humor in 1998, Eddie was invited to honor him. He declined. No headlines, no statements, just absence. Years later, when Eddie himself won the prize, he mentioned Pryor carefully. "There's only one Richard. I was lucky to walk behind him, even if he never reached back. That's not hate, that's heartbreak." Eddie stopped waiting for approval and built his own lane. Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney. Sharp, legendary, outspoken. He was Pryor's writer, his right-hand man, and he guarded that legacy like it was sacred. So, when Eddie rose up and people compared him to Pryor, Mooney took offense. Over the years, Mooney slipped jabs at Eddie, calling him Hollywood funny, saying he lacked the rawness Pryor had. Sometimes he even hinted Eddie borrowed material without credit. Eddie never fired back until one quiet interview. When asked if he respected Paul Mooney, Eddie paused and said flatly, "He made people laugh. Just not me." That was it. A single sentence. Cold, final, dismissive. After that, the door was shut for good. Katt Williams. Now this one's more recent. Katt Williams made a career out of swinging wild at Hollywood, roasting legends, and saying the unsayable. But when he started targeting Eddie, it was risky. First, Katt joked about comedians who used to be funny and slipped Eddie's name in. Later, he doubled down in interviews, saying Eddie wasn't top 5 anymore, mocking him for not doing stand-up again, and calling his films safe. Eddie? Still silent. Until one rare interview. When asked about Katt's comments, Eddie just chuckled and said, "Everybody's got a mic now? Doesn't mean they're saying something." That's the thing with Eddie Murphy. He doesn't need to fight. He doesn't need to argue. He is the standard. And sometimes the sharpest cut is pretending you didn't even hear the swing. Eddie Murphy never needed revenge. He never needed to tear anyone down. He just needed distance. Silence was his weapon. And once Eddie closed the door, it stayed shut. So, here's the real question. Who do you think almost made this list, but didn't? Who's the one comedian Eddie might have kept cool with barely? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the stories behind the legends, hit that like button, subscribe, and join me next time. Because when it comes to comedy history, the best stories are the ones nobody tells out loud.